Okay, so we know what frequency is. We know what relative frequency is when we're talking about these distributions. Now we're going to add an additional element to it. We're going to make these cumulative. So we're just taking that frequency and that relative frequency, and then we're making them cumulative. Literally, what do you do when you have something that's cumulative? Like your final at the end of the semester is a cumulative final. What does that mean? Yep, it's everything from the semester. So we're adding it up. Everything goes together. And that's the same thing with a cumulative frequency distribution. You're going to add the frequency to the previous amount until you get the total at the bottom. You're just going to keep adding it up. Add the previous frequency to the current one until you get to the end. For the total. That's a D. Contrary to what it looks like. Doggone it. It doesn't do any good just to write over it, does it? Oops. For the total. So the very end, because it's all accumulated, so it's cumulative. At the very end, it's going to be the number that you have. It's going to add them all up. Same thing with the relative frequency. You literally do that. You're going to add the previous relative frequency to the current one, until you get to the end. Now, what do you know about, just like we've done before? You just keep adding them up. What number should you get at the end of the relative frequency? Because remember, those are the proportions. A 1, good. To get a 1. So this is the total for the frequency, however many you're talking about. Your relative frequency will always add up to 1 because it's all those different proportions added together so you can get to the 1 at the end. Make sense? Okay, so let's do it. Here are the fines. We already have the frequencies. We already have the relative frequencies. Those have already been put in place. So this is how we pull that off. The frequency goes with the frequency. You start with 1 because that's what it is that you have. Then I add 0 to that. So this is 1 plus 0 because that's the next value, which is still a 1. Then you add the next to it, 1, because that's what you have, plus 7 will be 8. Then 8, because you have that, you're accumulating, right? You're adding on, adding on. 8 plus the 10, that is the value, will be 18. 18 plus the 5, which we're putting in there. Do you see how this is going? 23 plus the 4 will be 27. 27 plus that 13 will be 40. Whoa, I almost messed it up. 40 plus that 4. Do you see where we're getting these values from? It's what you have, and you add it to that previous. 44 plus the 5 will be 49. And then 0 of them, still 49. That's okay because you're still just adding up in cumulative. 49 plus the 1 is 50. You should come up with 50 because remember there were 50 fines. We were talking about 50 fines. That's where your data was based on those 50 fines. So that should always end up being your total. Do you see where this is going down with that? Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing with the relative frequency. You always start at the beginning. I'm getting my calculator out because I might need it for some of these. Oh, these don't look too bad. So I might be able to just do it in my head. So 0.02 plus 0. It's the exact same thing as we're looking at for this one. That's still 0.02. And then you've got 0.02 plus 0.14. It's 0.16. Then are you okay? Do I need to keep writing this addition over there every time? Are you okay with that? 0.16 times 0.2 is 0.36. Plus 0.1 is 0.46. Plus 0.08 is 54. Plus 0.26 is 0.80 or just 0.8. Plus, let me write it just so that you make sure that you see what's happening here. This is coming down. This is in that spot. That's a 0.88. And your calculator, there's nothing wrong with using your calculator. And this is plus that extra 0.10 will be 0.98 plus 0. So you keep it, right? It stays there. And then plus the 0.02. Lo and behold, always a 1 or super close to the 1. If it's 0.99, you're good. If it's 1.01, you're good. Because it's rounding. Sometimes whenever you're looking at these different cumulative frequencies, they're going to round. This will always be the total. It'll never be off. But depending on how these are rounded with your relative frequency will make an impact. As long as it's super close to 1, then you're in good shape. Cumulative, add them up as you go through. Add them up as you go through. That's the whole point. Just keep adding the previous one. If it helps you to write this out, do it. It's not necessary. The only thing that you need for this column are the actual values. I just want to make sure you knew how to get there. Start with the current one and then add to it every time to get the next value. Does that make sense? Cumulative. At the very end, that's where you get your total. Cool, right? Just another way to show the data. Now, this last little piece of it, it's nice, right? It's just a different type of graph. We're not going to have any homework on it, but it's good to just see a different type. So we've talked about the cumulative of it. The ogive is how you say that, ogive. An ogive is a graph that represents the cumulative. So notice here's my cumulative relative frequency on this particular one. What do? You get it up to 1. It is showing this data. It's just the cumulative frequency on that graph. So you always end up where it starts at the top. If you were doing the frequencies, you would end up here at 50. That's all that is, right? It's just setting that up so that you end up at that end. So you're accumulating those values. You're just adding it up to the next one. So the data that's used is this one and this one. Here's the horizontal axis. And these are the values that are cumulative up to get that. Just another way to do it. All right, cool. You guys are doing so great, rocking through this data and showing it up. Good job.